British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that Vladimir Putin is the only person who doesn't want the war in Ukraine to stop. On the other side, French President Emmanuel Macron called recent developments a turning point in US policy towards Russia. These are two developments, but main developments we see in the war field. Escalation of the war between Ukraine and Russia. Latest missile and drone attacks took place. I will give you the development. Let me introduce my very distinguished gentleman, panelist today, Sir Dalton, who is very smart on international affairs. John Charles Dalton here in the studio, and from Washington we have Norman Flood Barnes with the latest developments from Washington DC. Unfortunately, last three shows we could not connect him due to technical reason. Norman, welcome back on the show. Let me ask you, what are the latest you have? What are the updates and what's going on around the globe? What is it in your table right this moment? Norman Flood Barnes from Washington DC. Norman, can you hear us properly? We can't hear Norman properly. Technical team, please check it and let me come back to the studio, sir. As you heard, the escalation of the war between Ukraine and Russia. I have the latest Russian missile and drone strikes hit Ukraine overnight, killing at least 4 and injuring more, amid Ukraine's push for stronger sanctions and long-range weapons. I just want to ask you, what do the latest strikes indicate about Russia's strategy and Ukraine's defense priorities going forward?
Well, you know, among the strikes that happened was a missile strike on a kindergarten where 4 children were killed. So this inability of Russia to target military facilities or energy facilities with just random buildings, shooting indiscriminately into a country, shows a lack of finesse and expertise that they would not like anybody else to see. But they're just acting randomly to fire missiles into the country to cause as much personal pain and destruction as they possibly can. That will be their strategy. They will go over the top. Their idea of not to have ground battles anymore. They've lost how many millions of soldiers in this conflict. They don't want to lose any more, and they're getting pounded on the ground. So according to all the military experts that I listen to, I'm not like I can't comment directly on that, but they're just going over the top. They're sending missiles into to Kiev and into Ukraine to bring fear and suffering into the population. Now, on the other side, the thing that's happening on Ukraine's side is Ukraine has been the coalition of the willing, getting the Europeans all together to support, continue to show their support and to provide the reinforcements that he needs psychologically, politically, fiscally. And in terms of what the United States is willing to do, the sanctions against the 2 largest oil producers, okay, Lukoil and Rosneft, will in fact hurt. They have to get the buyers to agree, as India apparently is willing to do, is to stop buying Russian crude. But if they can turn off that pipeline without bombing it and destroying it, as some people argue, this will have a considerable impact on the amount of money that is able to be generated from the oil sales to prosecute this war. And so I'm very hopeful that these sanctions will work, that they will put some pressure on that has not been achieved by the previous sanctions, and that Russia's attitude and willingness to come to the table to negotiate may change. I think right now it's an intractable situation. There's no winners or losers. Everybody's stuck in the situation that they're in. In that sense, Trump may be right to say, okay, look, stay where you are. Let's negotiate a peace agreement based upon the status quo. But I certainly hope that something happens as a result of the sanctions that the U.S. has put on these 2 large oil producing companies.
Right, sir. How are Western allies, especially NATO or European Union, responding or failing to respond, and what does that mean for deterrence at this stage?
I think NATO and the EU are 100% behind Ukraine for a variety of reasons, not least of which they understand that the person they're dealing with is an expansionist, and that there's no guarantee that Ukraine is the last stop in this expansionist mentality. So they're very clear that they want to draw the line now to make sure that there's no future endeavors into Europe. Okay, so it's a winning formula for them. They stand strongly behind Ukraine, and they will continue to do so, I'm sure. I think that some in the past, and I go back to this whole issue of the pipeline, we had a lot of wink going on in Europe for a while. We're against Russia, we're against stop this, but they would buy all the oil, let the pipelines bring it in. $600 billion in revenue in the last 2 years into Russia as a result of purchases of crude oil by European countries. But now they seem absolutely willing to bear some of the pain. Germany says that they will no longer buy any more Russian crude and natural gas. The natural gas is also a major factor in this equation. So if European countries stop buying, then Russia is in a fix. And they cannot continue to prosecute the war unless they get some money from someplace.
Before asking you the third question on this matter, I have got two points in favor of this situation by Washington Post and New York Times. Washington Post says, highlighting the conflict keeps international attention on Ukraine's plight and pressures for support. And New York Times says, continued aid and sanctions send a signal that aggression carries cost, potentially deterring further escalation. I have got the different opinion from Wall Street Journal and NPR. Wall Street Journal says a prolongation of the war increases human suffering, economic damage, and risk spill over the neighboring states. And NPR says military escalation without diplomatic alternatives may deepen stalemate and undermine prospects for peace. Very nice words they have written. Sir, I just want to know, what are the risks of escalation regionally and globally from this continuing fight, because neighboring countries are getting engaged in an indirect manner, like Poland, Belarus?
Yeah, well, we don't want to bring Belarus into the battle on the ground. Okay, that would be a very, very difficult situation for Ukraine. They have provided secret support all along, but Belarus is right on the border and staunch ally of Russia. Poland has been a great source of relief for all the humanitarian, the exodus of so many migrants into Poland. Great support there. And I think they will continue to do that. They have a sort of a great close relationship, and they'll do that. I kind of think that the comment by NPR is probably the closest, that the prolongation of this will basically create a stalemate, which absolutely cannot be resolved. Nobody will win, nobody will lose, but Russia will never negotiate away the land that they've captured so far in Donetsk and the eastern provinces, or Crimea. They will never negotiate a land swap of that kind, in my opinion, as long as Putin is in power. This is his red line.
Sir, did you notice one thing? After Alaska summit between President Trump and Putin, we usually and practically don't see any effort by anyone except Donald Trump. He was supposed to meet Putin in Budapest, but that program also cancelled. After that, we don't see any effort from any side to stop this war. Can you say one or two reasons why everybody quit to deal with Vladimir Putin?
Well, he's intractable. I mean, he has a position. He's had it from the beginning, and he's not about to change. The meeting that was going to be held Viktor Orban has his own problems in Hungary right now. They're rioting in the streets. Millions of people are against the regime in Hungary. So maybe the meeting was canceled because they couldn't hold it in that kind of a situation. Putin is intractable. You know, as I've said, he's a religious, Christian politician. He sees all of this as a holy war to regain the motherland. He will not be swayed. And so, as long as he's the patriarch Kirill's puppet, he will continue to press his case into recapturing all of Ukraine and reattaching it to the old Soviet Union, the Russian Empire. So I think that's the reason why people just back away, is because they realize talking to him is fruitless. Nothing is going to happen as long as you're talking to Putin about any kind of accommodation. He will not make an accommodation. Now, if the oil thing works, again, as I said before, he may be pressed by other factors inside the Soviet Union, inside Russia, slip of the tongue there, inside Russia, to go to the peace table and sort of try to arrive at some sort of a consensus agreement that the Russian population can live with. They cannot live with, psychologically, the Russians cannot live with defeat.
Exactly, sir. We have got Norman back with the technical fixing the situation. Norman, I asked you what are the latest you have, because Donald Trump again is in the news headlines for making the ballroom. Donald Trump again in the headroom quitting the Budapest summit. Donald Trump again in the newsroom news headlines because he is not trying to negotiate with democrats to bring back from shutdown. Feel free to put your issues on the show. Norman Flood Barnes from Washington, D.C. The situation. Norman, I asked you what are the latest you have, because Donald Trump again is in the news headlines for making the ballroom. Donald Trump again in the headroom quitting the Budapest summit. Donald Trump again in the production, please check and be confirmed that we are getting his voice and video properly. I don't know what's the reason behind this technical limitation, sir. Again, let me come back to the studio. How might this war reshape energy, economics and geopolitical alignments in Europe and beyond? Because it's a long, prolonged war is going on.
Well, no question about it. I mean, in the past, India was always buying Middle East oil. Then they got cheap crude from Russia, and for the last 2 years, they've been living off of that discounted oil. It's been a big boon to India economically. So from that point of view, that regional connection, Russia would lose that. So when you lose an economic connection, people are not so keen to be military allies as well. So India is going to be put in a position of not so staunchly supporting, Russia in these areas as they have in the past. Now maybe maybe the meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping will also deal with some of these energy issues, because Russia could in fact supplement some of their sales into China to offset the losses that they have in India. We'll see. We'll see. But before Norman comes back, and I hope he does come back, I'd like to comment on one of the things that's happening here. As many of you know, the east wing of the White House has been destroyed by a wrecking ball, so that Donald Trump could erect a massive ballroom, sort of the Versailles Palace approach. The King Donald is going to have a huge ballroom where he can entertain world leaders and everybody who comes to visit him, supplicants who come on bended knee to bring him gifts. This is a metaphor for the No Kings movement. This is a metaphor for a man who has lost his way. American sees the White House as a symbol. As ratty as 1942 was the beginning of the East Wing. It's not a new structure. It was added to the original White House, but it's symbolic. And to do it without consulting Congress, without asking permission to the Washington, D.C. Historical Commission, doing nothing about that is an indication of why the No Kings March was so on point. This man is untethered to reality, untethered to the rule of law, untethered to any reasonable thing that can be done in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry to bang on the paper like that. It's probably making all kinds of noise. But I want to comment on that whole idea. This is a metaphor. Tearing down the East Wing is a metaphor for this entire administration.
Sir, can a president do it without the permission or the approval of the White House Housing Department? There is a curator, and US Department of Housing on the other side, it needs approval and fund from Congress and Senate both. Can a president do it?
Yeah, it's a different thing altogether. I mean, basically what he would be required to do is to go to get permission, if you will, from the District of Columbia, and to get permission to do a renovation. He then would need to get the Historical Commission to all agree to allow him to do it, because that is a building registered with the National Landmarks Commission. So he doesn't have the right to simply go in and destroy something which is registered as a national landmark. He then would have to go to Congress, as others have done in the past. There have been modifications to the White House. Barack Obama took the tennis courts and made it into a basketball court. He likes to play basketball. That was a change. It was done. He went to Congress, got an appropriation. The money was set aside for that purpose. Other changes have been made by other presidents, but nothing so consequential. The last time, he ripped out the Rose Garden and put in some hokey-pokey plaza that he could set up picnic tables at. And now he's doing this privately financed, and there creates all kinds of potential conflicts of interest, privately financed ballroom in the anticipation that the United States would want to welcome all kinds of who knows what to come to the White House to, like, as I said, get in a receiving line, and he can show everybody that he's a world leader. It's crass. He's a vulgarian. It's just not something that American people would stand behind. I hope that some Americans are watching, because this is not.
Sir, let me add some of the key details we have received from his press department. The project is roughly 90,000 square feet ballroom.
Twice the size of the White House.
Yeah, 90,000 square feet ballroom proposed by Donald Trump himself and estimated to cost around 300 million. But before announcing this 300 million, I have listened to other audio clips broadcasted by CNN. First time he said roughly 150 million. Then after 2 days he said 250 million. Now finally he is saying 300 million. The donor list includes large technology and defense firms, crypto companies and individuals. For example, Amazon, Apple Incorporation, Google, Meta Platforms, Microsoft, Lockheed Martin, which is a defense contractor, was also listed among the companies. The project is being managed. Funds collected through a non-profit trust for the National Mall. So it's a huge move to change the entire approach of the White House.
First of all, he promised not to touch the building. He's going to put in that ballroom, but not to touch the building. Well, he lied about that. But, all of these companies have business with the United States government. They have dealings with regulatory controls, or they have business with contracting or whatever. So this is a massive conflict of interest in the making. So somebody, let's say, who needs regulatory relief would be able to show with Donald Trump that they gave money to support his private construction effort, and they would get favorable treatment from his cronies. He just now gave a pardon to an individual who was engaged in supporting sex trafficking, because he was a crypto financier who promised to give money to Trump. Trump is also trying to collect $130 million from Peter Mellon for the purpose of paying the troops. What a symbolic gesture that is. $100 a piece, 1.3 million troops on active duty. 130 million will give each one of them $100 a month. $100 for a month only. And so they want to take the pressure off the fight for the shutdown of the government by saying, oh, well, we're going to finance all the military, not to worry. What are you going to get, 4 pizzas? Each family gets, some pittance, some chump change from Donald Trump? Everything is just simply empty symbolism with this guy. So I hope that the American people, if you're there, This has just got to stop, doesn't it? Huh? I'm going to do my part when I come back. Believe me, I'm just a small guy, just a guy. But I'm going to put money in some Democratic candidates' pockets and hope they win.
Right, sir, let me check the White House renovation history, and I found very fascinating history. During the Joe Biden era, not a single penny was cost for renovation, but in Obama era, it was a security and energy efficiency upgradation, renovation of the press briefing room and West Wing offices, and it was only $3.4 million cost. And during Reagan and Bush senior upgradation, it was less than $1 million cost. Updated communication systems, wiring and security, modernized kitchen and situation room, installed new climate control and electrical system. That was in 1980s to 1990, and now see the difference, $300 million for a ballroom. He wants to show he is Trump, he is the boss. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for a short commercial break, and team is extremely working hard to fix. Norman from Washington.
Facility with exclusive equipment for man and woman. A restaurant of delicious local and international cuisine. Fully air-conditioned building with spacious banquet, car lift, sky view rooftop restaurant, all in one. Grand Club Limited, Mirpur 10, Dhaka.
কি এমন জিনিস যেটা সব লোকে খায়, ছোটরা খেলে পরে কেঁদে মায়ের কাছে যায়, বৃদ্ধ লোক খেলে পরে মাথায় দেয় হাত, যুবক যুবতীরা খেলে পরে এদিক ওদিক তাকায়?
ছেড়ে দে শয়তান, ছেড়ে দে, দেহ পেলে আমার মন পাবি না, ছেড়ে দে।
কোন ফলের বীজ নেই বলো দেখি দাদা, বলতে না পারলে হবে তুমি গাধা।
মন্দিরা চক্রবর্তী কার সাথে প্রেম করছে?
আমি এখন মা হতে চলেছে।
চিনেছি তোমারে আকারে প্রকারে, দিনের আলো রাতের আধারে।
কোন বাসায় শুধু দুজন থাকে, দরজা জানালা ছাদ কিছুই থাকে না?
পা, পায়ের নুপুর, ছন্দ,
মনে হচ্ছে কি ছু দিয়ে জাদু মন্ত্র করছে।
এক্স্যাক্টলি, পায়েরে নুপুর আমার।
অরিক্স স্পেশাল সেলিব্রিটি শো তারকার ঝলক দেখবেন প্রতি শুক্রবার রাত 9:30
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have got Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington DC back. I'm extremely apologize for the interruption in the first part. Norman, there is a free time for you to give us the update from Washington DC.
Yes, first thing, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, here we are basically watching the destruction of the East Wing for the purpose of this grandiose ballroom that is going to be twice the size of the White House. So it should be very interesting as this thing develops. At the same time, the president is in Malaysia. He's signed this ceasefire agreement with Thailand and Cambodia, and he's scheduled to talk with the Chinese. That's the biggest thing that's going on. And one other thing, while he's over there, the president just increased the tariffs, another 10% for Canada. That's going to have a severe effect on day trading. They do everything from automobiles, automobile parts, lumber, aluminum, things like that. So that's going to have an effect on the trade and the commerce between the United States.
Right, sir. As news also coming that US President Donald Trump is traveling to Asia, especially Malaysia, South Korea and Japan to attend the ASEAN summit. and meet China's President Xi Jinping with high stakes trade, security, and diplomatic issues on the agenda. First question I just want to put to your table: what are the key goals for this US China in this meeting, and how realistic are they? Because there are so many dispute of rare earth issues, dispute of BRICS, dispute of China's dominance on Russia. So what do you guess? What are the key goals?
The key goals for the U.S. is to calm the trade tension down. They want to address issues like the Chinese restriction on the rare earth minerals. These are things we necessarily need, and also to curtail the flow of fentanyl ingredients to the United States. And we want to increase American soybean purchases. So this is a trade attempt to basically work with the Chinese on basically try to how to facilitate the trade commerce and to basically calm things down in terms of exports restrictions.
All right, I really like Norman's statements always. His analytics, his sense on the particular topics is very easy. He describes the way he describes for the audience. I really love it. Sir, John Charles Dalton is here in the studio. I want to add him. How might trade, rare earth minerals and security, particularly around Taiwan? Taiwan is a big issue for America. Shape this agenda in this meeting, in this trip between Trump and Xi Jinping?
Well, they're two really kind of somewhat different issues. Now we have the trade issue with the rare earth minerals, and then you have the Taiwan security issue as well. We've just signed a long-term agreement with Australia as an alternative sourcing for rare earth minerals. Some people may remember that Trump tried to negotiate a deal to buy Greenland because there were supposedly rare earth minerals there. So he was anticipating this problem of having a sole supplier in China for rare earth minerals. Half of them we can't even pronounce. I mean, they're on the atomic table, but it's very difficult to pronounce. There's a group of about 16 of them, and it's a critical component in almost everything that we buy and we make. So there has to be some alternative found for it. China's in a commanding position as far as that's concerned, and we have to find some accommodation with them about that. Taiwan, I hope, although I don't trust necessarily that the deal will be as firm as it might have been in the past. I hope that the security guarantees that we have historically had with Taiwan are retained, and that a signal is sent to China that while we, just as Hong Kong was seen in the past as like, a part of China but not governed by it and administered by it, that at some point in the future Taiwan may be reunited philosophically, geographically, whatever, but that it cannot be conquered militarily. And if that deal can be worked out, then I think that that's a very successful summit for Donald Trump.
Exactly, sir. For Norman, I just want to know what implications does this tour have for US alliances in Asian region and regional balancing with China, because it is a big question right this moment.
One of the biggest issues is the renewed focus on regional defenses and what type of military theme we're looking at in the region. Taiwan is a very critical point on that. They hold a lot of rare minerals essential to our electronic world here on the western part of the world. And at the same time, Taiwan wants to maintain their independence. China again wants to bring them back in. This is going to be a very difficult task to achieve, and at the same time not affect the whole economic situation in the world. Trade, commerce, we're dealing with a world of AI. You see what's happening this week. Without the advent of artificial intelligence, we can't communicate. I'm a prime example of what happened this week. So we have to work out a compromise between the East and the West regarding on how we're going to coexist. The word I said coexist, not just Western side, the East side, whatever. We have to work out a deal because the East is not going away and the West is not going away. So we have to find a way to work it out. So hopefully these talks and these communications will calm things down and they come to a compromise where we can live with.
All right. If I put a question for John Charles Dalton, an international consultant, very experienced in almost all continents, who has the opportunity to work in more than 40 countries so far. I know he has a background from Johns Hopkins University. Sir, could this meeting mark a de-escalation in US-China relations, tensions or potentials, or it is likely to generate new friction?
It depends on what side of the bed Donald Trump gets up in the morning. I mean, he's totally unpredictable. So I'm hoping that it is a beginning of some sort of, as Norman has indicated, we can't keep going on with this tension. I mean, East-West or United States versus China, however you want to phrase it, we have to find some accommodation so that every day is not a different headline about conflict between China and the United States. Ultimately, that filters down to the personal level, and it just simply is very disruptive. I hope that some accommodation can be made. The 100% tariffs that Trump put on China, like last week, those have to be somehow negotiated back down to a reasonable level. I mean, that's what triggered the we're not going to export any more rare earth to the United States, was that the high tariffs that were imposed, by Trump. And that still is an open question in the courts, by the way, whether or not he even has the authority to do so, absent congressional approval. So I think it's hopefully that something will come out of it, but all of these summits are very short. I mean, all the Trump versus Xi are going to get together, but it's actually at the lower level where the technocrats come together, the technical committees, try to work out some accommodation in some detail. That's where the real rubber meets the road, if you will.
All right, sir. And I have a last question to Norman regarding the same issue. Then I will definitely share which top global medias supports this dialogue, or which top medias are not supporting, criticizing this meeting this time. My question would be, how should smaller Asian states interpret and respond to the US-China interplay during this visit? Because this visit is basically taking place due to ASEAN summit, and America is not ASEAN member.
Yes, very interesting. As you mentioned, the smaller countries, the smaller states, basically the emerging economies need to be wary of choosing sides. This is not an East versus West thing. This is basically something that we have to understand that we all occupy Earth, the land, the country, the sea, the water, the wind, everything. So we have to find a way, particularly the smaller countries, they have to find a way to avoid being put in a situation of high tariffs or restrictions or here, how we can compromise, how we can work with both ends. So I would suggest that any small country stay neutral, both sides. We can get something from the West, we can get something from the East. We just need substance that we can go about our way of life and not be off and on each day. We can't be hot and cold. We have to have a constant temperature where we can move on. Without that, everything is going to be disruptive, and we're not going to have any stability, and that leads to conflict.
Yes, BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, is highly supporting this meeting. They say it's a high-level meeting between US President and Chinese President may open a space for diplomacy, stabilize trade tensions and ease global economic anxieties. On the other side, Fox News is telling strengthening US engagement in Asia could reinforce regional security and reassure partners concerned about Chinese influence. But I have two other comments against this meeting. One is by ABC. They says if talks fail or are purely symbolic, the risk is highlighted unpredictably and renewed trade and tech rivalry. And CNBC also criticizing this meeting, short notice meeting. Smaller regional states might feel caught between great power rivalry, leading to pressure or reduced autonomy. I want to have a mixed comment from Sir Dalton on this editorial policies of the top world medias.
Well, I think that everybody's hopeful but worried. Huh? But I think that when we talk about Asia in this context, and I'm hoping that Norman will agree with me, we really have to talk about Asia Pacific. The Pacific Island, Australia, New Zealand,
Yes.
Guam. We have to talk about the Marshall Islands, Solomon Islands, all of these places in the vast Pacific. The conflict between China and Philippines, between Vietnam and China. The Pacific is sort of an overall context, not just the landmass. So that it's very, very important to look at that because, in terms of the smaller countries, the Marshall Islands have already kind of broken away from the United States and are supporting Chinese economic policy because China built an enormous harbor and port there to support their fishing industry. So this kind of agree with us and join us, as Norman said, it's better to be neutral, but some of them have already started to move towards China because of the investments that are being made there and part of the Belt and Road Initiative. So I think we have to look at the whole, not just Asia as a landmass, but all of the Asia Pacific region, Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, Vietnam, all of that has to be packaged together to understand the vast area that this encompasses.
All right, sir. China Daily has written editorial. I have had the opportunity to go through it, details, and I have read this article twice in this morning. They has written the style of American negotiation is too fast. The style of Chinese negotiation is too conservative and very slow. Therefore, President Trump will put so many things on the table and Xi Jinping will take time. Norman, would you mind to comment on this China Daily's editorial? I found this is very interesting.
Yeah, yes, it is. Because the Chinese philosophy is one of global infrastructure development. That is what they do. The Western U.S.-led Western world commentary and philosophy is one of trade and commerce. We want to buy things, we want to purchase things, we want to make things happen. So when you are a small, let's say the Marshall Islands, good example, the Chinese have brought in infrastructure to build seaports and whatever. So they have a natural affinity. Okay, I'm providing something that I need. And at the same time, the Western world says, well, we have products and goods that we want to sell, and we want you to deal exclusively with us. Well, there's no such thing as this. One provide a resource or provides a service. We need both. So we have to find a way to comfortably coexist and stay, I say, neutral, partial, apolitical in terms of development. So we need both. We can't survive just on one. So
All right.
it'll be very interesting how this thing plays out. So, you're choosing between your mom or your father, your mother or your father. Which one? Well, we need both.
All right, Norman, before go to the break, I'm asking one very interesting question to Sir Dalton. Sir, we know very well that Americans' strategy towards Russia is changing too fast because, because Donald Trump is not requesting Vladimir Putin anymore to stop the war. Is it the strategy to help Russia weakening themselves in economic strength?
It's really gives me a headache whenever you put the word Trump and strategy in the same sentence, because he's not a strategic thinker at all. He's a transactional, negotiated kind of guy. Every day he wakes up with a new
Impulsive.
idea and
Impulsive.
just compulsive. Thank you very much. He does not have a
Yes.
steady plan. So absent that, it's like, Forrest Gump, a box of chocolates. Everything is different. Everyone is a different taste. Donald Trump is unpredictable. So that's why this meeting is sort of high wire kind of an operation. I don't think Trump or the Defense Department or the State Department or the U.S. has a consistent policy vis-a-vis Russia per se, because the energy policy is different than the military policy. The negotiations about a New START treaty are different than what they would have in terms of export controls. It is just simply not a coherent, logical policy strategy with associated tactics having to do with the United States and Russia.
All right, sir. Due to my professional reason, I have checked one very comparative things in what stage on global affairs, who comments first, who comments last from Washington. I found 91% of the time US State Department or State Secretary used to comment first, then the President. But this time I found 93% of the time President comment first and 7% of the time Marco Rubio, State Secretary, comment first.
Surprise.
This is a very interesting survey. I have done it by myself. I have checked it in different online platforms and apps. I have got it. Whether it is accurate or not, I could not check. I'm going for a short break, but when I'll be back, I will talk about the intensified strikes by Gaza, Hamas, West Bank conflict and air strikes in Gaza despite ceasefire, because we know ceasefire is going on, but some attacks news also coming to the newsroom.
হ্যাঁ গো,
আর কত দূর?
আরে আমি তো ফিডের গাড়ির লগে।
তোমার গরু, হাঁস, মুরগি, মাছ তো অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে।
কি কও, অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে? কেডা? হাঁস মুরগি মাছ।
আরে ওগো মতি গতি দেখা মনে হইতাছে এসএফএ ছাড়া কিছুই খাইবো না।
হ্যাঁ গো, এসে ফিডের খবর ওরা জানলো কেমনে?
আরে ভালো জিনিসের খবর ছড়াতে কি আর মাইক লাগে? খবর ভাসে বাতাসে বাতাসে।
আরে দেখো, এসে ফিডের জাদু।
সম্পূর্ণ নিজস্ব তত্ত্বাবধানে বিশেষজ্ঞদের সমন্বয়ে প্রস্তুত হয় এসএ ফিডের পশুখাদ্য। অত্যাধুনিক প্রযুক্তিতে তৈরি এই পশুখাদ্য যেমন নিরাপদ তেমনি স্বাস্থ্যকর। এসএ ফিড, নিরাপদ ফিড, স্বাস্থ্যকর প্রোটিন। এসএ অ্যাগ্রোফিডস লিমিটেড একটি এসএ গ্রুপ অফ কোম্পানিজের প্রতিষ্ঠান।
Grand Palace, 5-star chain hotel, Zinda Bazar, Sylhet. Local and international cuisines. Exclusive banquet hall for all events. 5-star luxurious rooms and suites with bulletproof glass. Fiberglass swimming pool. Relaxing spa. Well-equipped gym.
Despite an ongoing ceasefire effort, the Israeli military launched an airstrike in the Gaza Strip, raising tensions and undermining fragile peace momentum. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the studio. First, let me do this question to Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes, who is in Washington. Sir, what does the resumption of strikes suggest about the validity or viability of the current ceasefire and peace initiatives brokered by President Trump himself?
The situation in Gaza is very fragile. It's day to day. Both parties are violating the ceasefire agreements. They're still shooting, still killing. They're still provoking each other. It's very interesting that Israel still maintains 53% of Gaza. the region. Uh, they are still shooting Palestinians. Palestinians and are still trying to get back to the homeland. Hamas is still distrustful and not willing to give up any arms, particularly in light of what's going on. Looking ahead, there should be questions. The United Nations, hopefully, the United Nations Security Council should be more discussions talking about good faith negotiations. The issue is two things. One, they need to get to the next phase where they can start discussing the root cause. What is the root cause of the conflict? And to launch a credible process for a two-state solution. That's it. The rest of this stuff means little without these two issues being properly addressed.
All right, Sir Dalton, would you mind to describe how do the humanitarian, political and security dimensions interplay in the Gaza or West Bank context? I asked you this question particularly because you have the experience to work in Gaza, West Bank and that region in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, I think often overlooked in this whole discussion is what's happening in the West Bank. Is that we have an agreement between Israel and Gaza. Everybody has agreed about Gaza. But simultaneously and concurrently in the West Bank, Israeli settlers are attacking Palestinian farmers and shepherds and olive growers, and they're trying to drive them out of their existing land. And they're trying to create, again, conditions on the ground which prevent a two-state solution. And I think that discussion of a two-state solution, absent a working Palestinian Authority that can somehow or another control both parts of the West Bank and Gaza, is just a discussion. I mean, there's no prospect of ever having a two-state solution in the upcoming future, in any kind of practical way. But the West Bank, keep an eye on that West Bank. These settlers are people who have been invited to come to Israel from the United States, from the Soviet Union, from Europe, with the express purpose of throwing out the resident Palestinian population in West Bank settlements on farms, taking over the land, and reclaiming it as part of their holy mission. And so this is a really a tactic that is being used by the Israeli government to try to make sure that this is no prospect ever of having a united West Bank Gaza kind of union.
I'm sure Norman has something to add, and with that I just want to put one question as well. What options remain for de-escalation and what are the obstacles at this situation right now?
Well, the obstacles are, we're talking about the obstacles that we have conflict. There's no trust. The Israelis are still there. And John mentioned about the West Bank. That is something that is largely overlooked. We talk about Gaza, but we're talking about the whole situation, the development of the Palestinian state. The disruptors are coming into the West Bank area to create chaos, to create situation where the Palestinians create an unlivable situation where they cannot live there in peace. They can't coexist. I have many friends in that area, the West Bank, and for years, they've been living. The people have been living fine with each other, next to each other. They go to the same store, they go to the same schools. But the influx of these disruptors coming in to create a tension between the two is all by design to ensure that there will be no peace as long as the Palestinians are in that area and long as the Israeli wants to take over the area. There's going to be conflict as these outsiders are basically agitating. The people who live there, they're fine. They're fine. They live together. They have no problems. But the outsiders coming in is causing a real problem, and it will delay the process of what we're talking about a two-state solution.
All right, if I go for John Dalton, sir, could renewed military operations set back reconstruction and stability efforts long term? Because both Netanyahu and Donald Trump are committed to start reconstruction project.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, the time will come when we will learn how much money was put on the table by the United States and the Arab participants to convince Netanyahu to do the right thing. Someday we'll see how much money was piled up on the table that forced his hand and made him agree. So let's talk just a second about whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu actually controls Israeli Defense Forces, whether he controls his own Defense Department, whether he controls the people in his coalition government, which are hell-bent on destroying Gaza and killing all Palestinians. There are three people, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and Katz. These three people in the cabinet are absolutely totally disagree with the settlement that was reached on this ceasefire deal. And they will act independently without any kind of approval from the Knesset or approval from Netanyahu. That whole scenario last week where Donald Trump was in the Knesset, and that was great theater. But I worry very much whether a peace can hold in that situation in Gaza at all. The Hamas has not been disarmed. I'm highly skeptical of any kind of a long-term solution. And the only thing that'll maybe do a little bit of that is if they can get the Hamas to agree, let's go forward with a complete reconstruction, a 10-year plan or whatever, and let people come in and do it, build new housing. But I'm highly skeptical that this is going to survive.
I'm receiving requests from my audience to know something about the latest updates and developments of the U.S. federal government shutdown from the people from Bangladesh living in United States. So I think Norman can put his take on that.
Yes, the situation is dismal. Speaker of the House has purposely told the representatives to go home. We're gonna buckle down. The Democrats are still holding to the guns, and the people are in a situation where now in Washington D.C. itself, we have basically food banks that is running out of food. We have furloughed workers lining up around the block. It is reminiscent of the Depression period. They're waiting, trying to get food. They do not have food. We're coming up on another week where there will be no paychecks for the employees. Rent is due. Children need shoes. We need to eat, and the temperature is changing. It's starting to get cold here, so it's going to be a very interesting situation going on. And at the same time, we are building ballrooms, and we're buying jets, and we're doing all these other things with citizens' money, but we don't have money to feed the people.
All right.
The people are hungry.
All right, Norman.
Yes.
Today is a very special day for me because I have interviewed one American politician twice. She is none other than Hillary Clinton. Today is 26 October. In 1947, she born, and today is her birthday. She was American politician, former First Lady, and before First Lady, she was, after First Lady, she became the Secretary of State. She was U.S. Senator, she was U.S. Secretary of State, and one of the most prominent political figures of her time. I want to say happy birthday, but I want to take one comment or a few comments from Sir Dalton and also from Norman. First, Dalton.
About Hillary?
Yeah.
Much admired. Hillary Rodham Clinton, she's was famous in Arkansas as Bill Clinton was famous. She was probably one of the most well-prepared persons for the office of the presidency ever. She would have been an excellent leader, but she may well have foretold the loss of Kamala Harris, that Americans are not yet disposed to put a woman in the White House. That's possible. But I have a lot of respect for Hillary. But she had, she also made some classic mistakes. I mean, she really after the Iraq and Afghanistan ventures, I mean, she expanded the number of people in the State Department and USAID to the point where they didn't have anything much to do. And we were stuck with a workforce that was overweight, let's say.
All right, sir.
Let Norman comment, please.
Yeah, Norman, do you want to say anything to Hillary Clinton's birthday in 30 seconds?
Hillary Clinton is a very capable politician. She would have been a great leader, but unfortunately, in the times we live in, she may have been born in a time that not ready to allow a female to take a prominent role. She's a very dominant type of person when she do things, and I'm not sure that the leaders, the lawmakers, and the actual people who actually run this country is prepared for what Hillary had.
All right, sir. After all of these things, for her long journey, today we want to say happy birthday, Hillary Clinton. She has been a great friend of Bangladesh. I'll see you tomorrow.